When I found myself in Wonder Hell, I was like, there's got to be a way out. Like, how do I figure this out? And I did everything. Like, I 10x'd, I leaned in, I crushed it. Like, I washed my face, I stopped apologizing. Like, if there was a self-help book, I read it, I followed it, and I failed at it, right? Like, it just didn't work for me. I was like, there has to be a way out of this. And so one of the great things about the line of work I'm in is that I get to meet all these amazing people in the green room. So I got to know Olympic medalists and startup unicorns and glass ceiling shatterers. So I basically spent a year having conversations with like 100 of them to figure out what they did. And here's what I learned, Greg.
Laura, welcome to the show.
Hello, Greg. It is great to be here.
It's amazing to have you. I was checking out your book earlier, and as mentioned, going through your TED Talk, and what an awesome topic to be talking about: uncertainty, anxiety, what the stress that it takes for us to be successful. So you have recently, when's the book actually coming out, by the way?
The book comes out April 4th. So It is about to launch. I just locked in Good Morning America for April 6th. I'm going to be in the window of Barnes & Noble, Fifth Avenue that whole week. It's all coming together, but I'm actually ironically in Wonder Hell about Wonder Hell right now.
Yeah, well, maybe we could debrief you a little bit today over the show as well. But let's start with that, Wonder Hell. Tell us about the book. It's coming out in April. Very excited.
Yes.
Love the whole concept of it. And I think just to sort of maybe preface this, really what it takes to be successful. And as we're building businesses and communities and stuff, the exercise that we have to go through. So what sort of kicked this off for you? Where did this book all begin?
Yeah. So I have spent the last 25 years really focused on this question of why doesn't success equal happiness? Like, I spent 20 years in executive search, and I was paid by my clients to call the most successful people in the world: bold-faced people, bold-faced titles, bold-faced organizations. And it was my job to recruit them away on behalf of my clients. And you would think that would sound like kind of a hard job, try to recruit away people that are super successful. They were successful, which is why I was calling them, but they weren't very happy, which is why they were calling me back. So I became fascinated about this question. And what I realized is that a lot of us find success, we fill in all the boxes, and we fill it in along somebody else's path to someone else's success. So when we get there, the boxes are full, but we feel empty. And so my first book, Limitless, was sort of about how do we create a definition for success that matters to us. So I followed my own advice, and I did it. And then I got successful again. And I was like, now I'm going to figure it out. This is going to be it. I have reached the final destination. And then once I hit that success, I was like, wait, in that moment, I saw another version of myself, an even bigger, better version of myself. And suddenly I saw this potential, the burden of my potential that walked in. It was like, hey, Laura, what you got for me? Are you going to live into this newfound you that you didn't even know existed last week, last month, last year? Or are you going to let it pass you by? And that's when I realized that success, in fact, isn't a finite destination. It's not an end point. It's a waypoint. Like it's we don't get to the end and go, okay, I'm here, done, easy money. Every time we get to success, oh my God, it's amazing. It's exciting. It's wonderful. We feel this burden of potential lean down on us and say, what's next? Right. So then there's exhaustion, there's anxiety, there's stress, there's a question of who we are and what we can be. And so it's wonderful, but it's hell. It's Wonder Hell. So this book is all about why success doesn't feel like it should, and then what we should do about it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe what you just said there is the answer lies in that piece, which is, success is a definition of the continual pursuit, and the exercise and the effort that we got to put through, and it's not an easy road to go through, right? Going back to executive search is a difficult business, right? I mean, it is a cold calling, you gotta be intense about that. And, interesting that you mentioned the fact that, in some regards, as hard as it was to reach out to people and sort of get them on the hook to potentially move, the quick answer through a lot of these individuals, I'm assuming in like the high 90 percentiles, were like, yeah, talk to me. What's next? What's the option? Where else can I go? Right.
Yeah. And that to me was so interesting. I mean, you would think, and I should say, I spent that career doing this work for nonprofits, for NGOs, for universities, foundations, advocacy organizations, service organizations. So not only were these people, quote unquote, successful, they also had, quote unquote, purpose, right? So the answer wasn't even just like, yeah, you got the fancy office and the fancy car and the, fancy title and the fancy salary, but now you need purpose. They had that too. They had purpose also. And so that was like the real head scratcher for me, because I'm like, well, if they've got success and they've got purpose, well, then there's no hope for the rest of us, right? And it just turns out that in fact, it every time we achieve, like every time you hit the ceiling of something, you realize that that's just your next floor for tomorrow. And, this book isn't one of those like hustle harder and keep growing and bigger, better, faster, more. In fact, there are chapters in the book where I talk about how like maybe it is time to take a step back, but I am endlessly fascinated. And I know you are. I mean, let's look at the title of this podcast, right? Look at the work you do, that each one of us at every age and at every stage has an additional gear in there if we choose to find it. And there may be moments where we decide it's not the right time, but there also may be moments where we're like, I kind of want to explore this. Like, how fun would it be to see what else I'm made of?
Yeah, that's like our adventurous side, our curious side. I'll need to continue to compete. I talk about wind in the sails, right? Which is, sometimes we lose that wind, but like, we've got control of the mass. We could change the direction. All right, so let's jump into Wonder Hell. I love the title, by the way. It's really broken into 3 sections, right?
Yes.
So first, walk us through the sections, and then let's talk about each. The first is called the
Imposter Town. Well, so
Imposter
I need
Town,
to preface it by saying that the entire book is organized like an amusement park, because like when you go to an amusement park, you're like, this is going to be so much fun. And then you get there and it's like 3:00 in the afternoon and you're hot and you're smelly and you're sweaty and you're like a little sunburn and you're waiting in line for that roller coaster that you're not entirely sure you want to go on even.
Too much money.
Yeah, you've spent a ton of money. Your kids are whining. The corn dog in your stomach is like, I'm going to make a break for the exit when you get on that ride. And you're like, I thought this was going to be fun. Why isn't this fun? I kind of feel like success is the same way. Like you leave a company, you start your own business, you're starting to find success, and all of a sudden it's 3 a.m. and you're doing your invoices while you're stressed out about tomorrow's presentation. You're like, this was going to be fun.
Right.
I've actually I've got a business that's working. Why aren't I having more fun? Why aren't I enjoying it more? So I was like, it's kind of like an amusement park. So the book, it's organized. I have it for people watching on video. I have it right here. There's, it's a whole theme park of Wonder Hell. So inside there are 5 main parts. There's the information desk, which is, the opening. Then there's Imposter Town, Doubtsville, and Burnout City. And then the conclusion is the souvenir shop. And my husband's idea was to make the acknowledgements overflow parking, which I thought was adorable. So there are basically 3 main sections of the book. There's, as we mentioned, Imposter Town, Doubtsville, and Burnout City. And as we explore, as we find success, we have this tsunami of emotions that come at us. And so what I did is in each of these towns, there are 5 rides, and each of the 5 rides are one of those emotions. So the very first one in Imposter Town is the Imaginarium, is that moment where you walk in and suddenly you're like, you see a bigger version of yourself. It's that moment where you've experienced that first success. Maybe you sold your first business. Amazing. Maybe you just sold your first contract or your first tube of lipstick. Right. It could be a huge thing. It could be a small thing, but it's in that moment where you look through the doors of what you never thought you could accomplish, and you see even more doors that you never even knew were available to you. And it's in that moment where you think, oh, maybe there's more. Maybe I want more. Isn't that exciting? So it sort of starts off with that, and then it sort of works its way through what all of these experiences would be.
You're describing like that first moment of imagination. It's whimsical, right? It's the child side of our personality. This makes no rational sense, but I'm into it. Now, where does this lead us? I mean, where does the imposter's side kicks in?
Yeah. So then it leads us into the fortune teller, which is how we make our own luck. Because in that moment, you're like, can I do it? Should I do it? How do I do it? Other people are just luckier. It seems to come so natural to them. And so I break down the science behind both how do we make ourselves luckier, but also what is manifestation after all. And so once we go through that and we figure out there are actually things that people do that make them luckier, then we move into the Hall of Mirrors, the Tent of Oddities, the Haunted House, and we can go through as many of these rides as you want. But in each of them, what I do is I tell stories. So when I found myself in Wonder Hell, I was like, there's got to be a way out. Like, how do I figure this out? And I did everything. Like, I 10x'd, I leaned in, I crushed it. Like, I washed my face, I stopped apologizing. Like, if there was a self-help book, I read it, I followed it, and I failed at it, right? Like, it just didn't work for me. So I started talking to people that I knew. And one of the most fun things about being in the line of work that I'm in is that I get to meet all kinds of fascinating people in the green room of events. Sorry, I have a dog.
Okay. I hear the doggy. Right.
Sorry, my Doberman is very angry, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, what kind of dog? Doberman?
Well, I have a Doberman. I have a 55-pound Doberman. Then I also have a 5.5-pound Brussels Griffin. So the two of them are sort of hilarious as a pair.
I'm a dog person, so.
Okay, well, good. Sorry about that. So when I found myself in Wonder Hell, I was like, there has to be a way out of this. And so one of the great things about the line of work I'm in is that I get to meet all these amazing people in the green room. So I got to know Olympic medalists and startup unicorns and glass ceiling shatterers. And so I basically spent a year having conversations with like 100 of them to figure out what they did. And here's what I learned, Greg, which was really the most devastating thing of all, that there isn't a way out of Wonder Hell. I was like, there has to be a solution, but it turns out there's not a way out of Wonder Hell, because Wonder Hell is a repeat occurrence, right? Every time we succeed and we see a new version of ourselves, then there's something else we want to figure out. And then when we succeed at that, so it's really the cyclical journey. And if we're lucky, on the other side of this Wonder Hell, it's just the next one and the next one and the next one. And so what I learned from these people, which was less devastating, was that the secret to being able to plan for it and to look forward to it and to learn from it and to thrive in it and actually enjoy the ride was to change the way we interpreted our experience with these emotions. So it wasn't any longer, oh my God, I haven't done this before, but oh my God, I haven't done this before. And it's in that moment of renegotiating our relationship with the stress that comes that we have the opportunity to live into the wonder of all of it and not just fester in the hell.
Right. I think that's the trick to all of this, right? Which is, how do we manage the stress and the impact of what our efforts are, right? Interesting. So coming back to the book, this leads us into Doubtsville, right?
Yes.
Doubtsville Town or Doubtsville?
Doubtsville.
Doubtsville, right?
Doubtsville, Imposter Town, Doubtsville,
yeah.
Burnout City.
By the way, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been through all of this. Like, as you're describing, what I love about the descriptions and how you've laid it out in rides is it's so personable and it's relatable. It's like, I get that, and that makes sense.
I mean, the book is sort of a choose your own adventure. So if you're like, oh my God, I have no idea who I am, you could just go right to the Hall of Mirrors. If you're like, I keep getting knocked off course, you can go right to the bumper cars, right? So it's sort of written in this way, just like an amusement park where you can choose what ride you want to go in and what order.
Right. But we might argue that and what you've done is you've mapped this all out, which is everyone going through this type of success is going to hit all of these things, right? The bumper cars, the Hall of Mirrors, right? And without going and leaning into this and understanding it, we don't actually grow. I mean, the more I'm talking to you, the more I hear this is a book about, like, what it takes to grow, right? And growth is a huge piece of success. And the other side of it was just secular. Every time we come out of this one wonder hell, we're going to get into the next, and it's not all doom and gloom. It's like, it's a new adventure, it's a new ride, it's growth. And I think that's what we're built to do as human beings. Is we have this insatiable need to grow, right? In fact, think about our relationships with our partners, our significant others, our spouses. A massive piece of that successful relationship is our ability to grow together, right?
Absolutely. And it's one of the things that I talk about in the Doubtsville section itself. There's one of the rides is the Ferris wheel. And so if you imagine you're getting on a Ferris wheel, those big, beautiful, like the London Eye, right? That you go to the top and you can see, all of London. Every time we succeed and we go to the top of that next hill, that next ride, we have a completely different view of ourselves. We have a completely different view of the world. We might have a completely different view of the people who are in the world with us. And a lot of times there are people who were maybe part of the ride before that are still kind of hanging on, that shouldn't be part of the ride anymore. Maybe they're just not adding anything to your life. Maybe you've been serving them for too long, and, I'm sure you have this with some of your coaching clients where you're like, maybe you're not ready to make the change that you keep saying that you're ready to make. And then there may be people who maybe they're not so happy for your success because they haven't grown as fast as you, right? And so there are people who they're going to start dragging on that momentum, on that wind in the sails that you talk about. So on the Ferris wheel, we cannot keep growing if we keep people in our lives who want us to stay small. And so there's, stuff in that chapter about how do you decide when to burn a bridge? How do you decide when goodbye is a gift? And so the whole book is really focused on helping people to understand that where they are in this moment in time is just where they are in this moment in time.
Right.
And that there needs to be different mindset shifts for every different emotion that they're feeling so that they can get out of the trap, because, the doors from hell are locked from the inside. Or a lot of times what we're experiencing, the stress and the uncertainty, and it's a lot of it is the self-talk. It's the position that we put ourselves in. It's the decision not to take that chance, take that risk, and to move. So really what I'm trying to push people to do is to understand that when you're in wonder hell, you can either focus on the hell part or you could focus on the wonder part, but it's your experience of it, right? To be all Buddhist, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Your experience of wonder hell is really up to you.
Right. Perspective, mindset, choice, right? The power of choice, the power of decision. And not enough people lean into that, not enough, just whether they're in business or general, people don't realize the power of choice, and I can choose to look at it this way or that way. And, I'm a big believer in reframing, right? Reframing is a very powerful tool, and not just saying something positive, which is oh, life sucks. No, life is great. Right. But
yeah, it's really, not like toxic positivity. We're not going for that. Right.
Correct. It's speaking to things differently, focusing on the objective, talking about things in more of a proactive or even in some cases neutral way. Right.
And one of the chapters in Doubtsville is the tunnel of love. That's one of the rides, and it's all about how we figure out who's going to be on this boat with us, right? If we can go farther and faster together, who's going to be in that seat with us? So when we decide who's going to sit in that seat as we're going, we really need to think about the right people. And, for some, it may be somebody who's aspirational, right? Somebody who you want to be when you grow up, right? Somebody who's a little further down the path than you've been. I always joke around that I'm so sick of these Instafluencer, social media people that are giving, that are these mastermindy coaches, because most of them have never built a business, so I joke around that I want to have t-shirts printed one day that say something like, before you tell me what to do, show me what you've done. And on the back, it's hashtag show me the P&L, right? Let's be serious. So maybe you have aspirational, somebody who is further down the path and who's going to help you get there, and who is a role model for you, even if you don't even know them personally, right? You can read their book, you can watch their videos, you can listen to podcast interviews here with great interviewers like you. So maybe you've got those. Maybe you have peers, and those peers are people that have the same goals. They're on the same path. They have the same priorities as you do. And you can complain to them. You can, you can bitch, you can moan, and they're sort of in the foxhole with you. Awesome. Great. And then there's mentees, and mentees also belong in the tunnel of love with you, because for people who have imposter syndrome, Greg, there is no better way to remind yourself that you actually know what you're talking about, that you actually know some things, that you've actually done some things, than to help somebody else figure it out for themselves. And so when I talk about who should be on the ride with you, it's not just, the fancy people who are going to pull you up. It's really everyone around you that shares the same value set and the same goal system.
Yeah. Love that. As you were talking about mentees, I was thinking there's an exercise that sometimes we have people do, which is, go to your LinkedIn and rewrite your LinkedIn, right? Because when was the last time you redid your profile, right? It's probably LinkedIn opened or you started a LinkedIn account. Right. And it's you got a bunch of references and, you did that whole cheesy thing. But if you actually go down and look at your career or the path that you've been on over the last, few years or while, and you start to put all those down, the accomplishments, the awards, the places that the things you've achieved, how you've grown, you step back and you read that, right? You almost start to see a different person, right? And it becomes wow, look at who I am. I love what you're really talking about, which is self-belief and also stepping off the carpet, right? We all need to take a little bit of risk in order for us to grow. And the way we grow is we step off our carpet that we tend to live on, we tend to stay on.
Yeah, I love that LinkedIn exercise, and I'm sitting here thinking, God, maybe I should go rewrite my own LinkedIn.
You
I'll
should have
remember what
thousand. You
I
should have
did.
1,000% do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I had a very funny experience in August of this year. I gave a keynote in Kansas City to 1,000 women. They were women leaders in college sports. So these are all the women in the United States who run college and university athletic programs. They're coaches, assistant coaches, and athletic directors. And so they were, all in and rowdy and just fired up. And
Right.
I was giving the
Great
main
audience.
keynote, and one of my best friends from university lives in Kansas City. So I was like, hey, you want to come see me speak? Like, come on. So she actually they put her front row center, and as I'm sitting like in the wings about to come out, there's an announcement video like, have you ever felt stuck? Well, lucky for you, Laura Gassner Otting is here. And it goes through this whole video of like a frequent contributor to Good Morning America. She's done this, she's done that, she's done that. And it's just, I sound like a million, billion, jillion dollars. And
Right.
I see my best friend from the wings, and she just mouths, wow. And it's not
Right.
like she doesn't know me. And it's not like she hasn't watched what I've done. And we know each other's careers, but just seeing myself in the reflection of her hearing that
Cool.
allowed me to walk out on stage feeling so confident and so ready to like rock the stage in front of these 1,000 women. And so it's funny. There's this theory that I write about in the first part in the Imposter Town section that's called the it's the reflected self theory. I think that's what it's called. And what it basically means is that you're not who you think you are. And you're not who I think you are. You're who you think I think you are, right? So all of us are actually a version of what we assume other people think we are. But when you hear somebody introduce you, right? I ran the Boston Marathon. I ran a marathon for the first time in my life, and I'd only run a 10K before that. And I didn't know if I could do it, right? I was like at this meeting, the first time we were about to go for training, and I went up to the coach and I was like, I don't know, man, like Coach Rick, I don't think I can do it. I've only run 10K before. I've just signed up for this marathon. And he looked me in the eyes and he stared at me and he said, Laura, you can do this. I believe in you and I'm here to help. And I looked at him and I went, Coach Rick, I can do this. You believe in me. Right. You're here to help. And it was like this weird Jedi thing that he did to me. But all of a sudden, I saw myself in his eyes, and I didn't need to have confidence. I just needed to borrow his confidence long enough to believe it myself. So before we started recording, we started talking about like fake it till you make it. And it's not even fake it till you make it. It's like borrowing confidence from other people who are the right people around you that don't give you the toxic positivity nonsense, but who actually lift you up because they see you as who you truly are, not just the last mistake you made, but the sum total of everything that's come before. And then they lift you up and help carry you to where you want to be.
Right. SEALs call this swim buddies. Right?
Exactly.
And scuba divers as well, right? Which is like you need that buddy sometimes to look after you.
Absolutely.
You were talking in my world. We describe it as self-image, right? Which is the projection, the image that I think the world sees me as.
Yes.
Right? And my self-esteem is built on that, right? My confidence.
Yes.
But I love what you just described, which is, and I'm just going to paraphrase it, which is, let's be so careful about all these individuals. I was going to say assholes, but it might not be
well, some of them are, yeah.
All these assholes around us, which are these toxic positivity vampires, which
absolutely
are not actually supporting us. And let's lean into people around us that can support and help and lift. And it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to beg and borrow some confidence, and it's okay to believe in someone else believing in you instead of you believing in yourself as much as they believe in you. And if we just kind of go with it for a little bit, we just might end up in the same position and page afterwards, right? Where
absolutely. Absolutely. There are studies that show that if you say I smoke, you are more likely to quit smoking than if you say I am a smoker. So what's the difference there? When you say I smoke, that's just something you do, right? That's something you do. That's something you did. I am a smoker is identification. Like I identify as a smoker. It's a lot harder to change your identity than to change a habit. And so if I show up late for a meeting, I may think to myself, I am a late person. I'm always late. I'm chronically late. I'm super disorganized. And that leads me to being late. I'm never going to get anything done. Meanwhile, the people who are sitting in that meeting They don't know that I've been late for 10 years. They just see that I've been late once.
Right.
And so we have to allow ourselves to see ourselves the way other people do and to actually believe it. I always say to people that, my great superpower, I have one and only one great superpower, and it is this.
Mm-hmm.
I am able to look at people and in fairly short order, see what makes them great and reflect it back on them in ways that they can finally, for the first time, see it or finally actually believe in it long enough to act upon it. And they don't have to crush it. They just have to start, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the starting, the hard thing about hard things, doing hard things isn't the hard, it's the do, right? Sometimes it's just getting started.
Right. Right. I talk a lot about motivation, which is motivation comes afterwards, right?
I think motivation is nonsense. I do, which is hilarious because I'm a motivational speaker, right? And I say to people, and I wrote about this actually in Wonder Hell, that I need to admit something. I think motivation is bullshit, right? Accountability, on the other hand, I am not going to go out for a run at 4:30 in the morning in January in Boston. But if I have told you that I'm going to meet you to run the Harvard Stadium, you bet your ass I'm going to be there every single day of the week, because I will break a promise to myself every day and 6 times on Sunday. But will I ever break a promise to you? Not a chance.
Right. What a powerful tool to be accountable, which is make commitments and promises and certainty to others. So you have to show up.
Yes. And that's why who's in the tunnel of love with you really matters, because whoever you put in that chair, if you put somebody in that chair next to you and there's somebody who you're like, it's cool, we're going to make this plan, but it's fine because they flake a lot. So I know I'll be okay. Well, guess what? Right. They're going to flake. You're going to flake. Everyone's going to flake. It's not going to work. So I think that you should find the biggest ass kicker, someone who kind of scares you a little bit. They are maybe a little bit aspirational because you don't want to disappoint them, right? You don't want to disappoint them. So you're going to show up because you're like, oh God, they don't think I'm, I don't think I'm going to do it. I'm not going to do it. So I think it's really important for us to think about who we have with us on this journey, because, they're the ones who put a lot of those thoughts in our heads too.
Super powerful, super, super powerful. Your network is your net worth. You want to play with better golfers or tennis players. And it's okay to be around people that you aspire to be, right?
And it's okay to not be around people that you don't aspire to be. It's okay to say that person is not. And here's the thing. There are studies that show that if you have obese friends, you are 57% more likely to be obese.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. Those friends don't actually have to be people you hang out with. This isn't oh, yeah, of course, because you go out to dinner with them and they eat fried chicken, so you're going to eat fried chicken. I mean, I love myself some good fried chicken, right? But it's if I'm with somebody and they ordered every single week and I ordered every single week, we're all going to get fat together.
Right.
But this is what I think is so interesting. They don't actually have to be people that are proximate to you. They don't have to be geographically close to you. So if there is somebody if you are consuming somebody's social media content every single day, if you're reading their emails every single day, if you're texting with them every single day, and they live on the other side of the globe from you, but they're making bad choices, you will make bad choices also, because what they socialize, you will socialize. What they read, you will read. What they think, you will think. And what they normalize, you will normalize. And so we have to create boundaries around us, both so that we don't let the negative in, because when we do that, then we also can help make more room for the positive.
I've gone through a big shift in my life with friendships over the last 3-4 years, and pandemic didn't help, but I'm at a stage now, and my friend said this because we moved to Costa Rica. My friend said, the greatest thing that you've done is you've given yourself an opportunity to develop very intentional relationships, not because of history and time, but because of these are the community and the people that you want to be around. And the difficulty in sometimes relationships and friendships is we're not friends because we should be friends. We're friends because
we have been friends.
Right. And it almost becomes like bubble gum on your shoe, where it becomes a little messy sometimes, right?
Yeah. And you can think well, that's fine. That high school friend is trying to sell me boxed wine, whatever, not a big deal. I can just ignore them. But you can't, because they still siphon your energy. And, if your brain is only capable of, extracting 50 bits of information out of the 11 million that are being thrown at it every single minute. Well, that's one bit you're giving away. So like, how many bits of attention do you want to give away? Because that it changes us. It changes what we think about. It changes our focus. It changes our attention. And I'm no longer willing to sacrifice what very little attention I have left to the box wine community.
Right. I call it being a little bit selfish, right? In order to serve.
I wouldn't even say selfish. I would say that it is self-focused. Because here's the thing, like, ambition kind of gets a bad rap, right? Like, we're like, oh, she's so ambitious. I mean, people don't say that much about men. Like, oh, he's ambitious. It's great. But like, there's like ambition, depending on the tone of voice you use when you say the word, could be like selfish, or ambitious could be like they're a go-getter. So I think ambitious does get a bad rap. And a lot of us feel like we can't embrace our ambition. So going back to that moment when you're in wonder hell, where you're like, this is incredible. It's amazing. It's wonderful. But also I could do more. Should I do more? Am I allowed to do more? One of the things that I learned from all of these people that I talked to, the Olympic medalists and the glass ceiling shatterers and the startup unicorns, was that they embraced their ambition. They were just like, you know what? I'm going to own it. Yeah, there is nobody else on earth who can do the thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to do this thing. Like, it's got to be someone. Why not me? Right? Yeah. Like, why not me? And so they embraced their ambition. And here's what I would say. And I would say this to everybody who's listening: would having more money, more time, more freedom, more flexibility, more leverage, more power, more contacts, more platform allow you to show up better for the people you love and the causes you hold dear? Damn right they would, right? So it's not really our ambition. It's actually our responsibility to all those people and those things and those causes and those companies in our lives.
Correct. Totally agree. All right, let's go to not the final chapter, but the next section, which is Burnout City. Which,
yes.
I think we all identify with when it comes down to success, but no one appreciates.
Yes.
Walk us through this section. What's it about? What are some of the main lessons?
Yeah. So this section is all about how to deal with, there's the roller coaster, right? How do you manage uncertainty? There's the trapeze. How do you fly without a net? The scrambler, of course, is finding your own way when you're all confused. We talked about the Ferris wheel. Oh, sorry, that's Doubtsville. I'm in the wrong section.
By the way, the trapeze and the roller coaster make so much sense when it comes.
Well, they do, right? Because then you're so super full of doubt because you're not sure, because you're like, oh my God, I'm getting, I'm things are moving faster. I'm uncertain. I don't really know what's coming at me. So yeah, those are all part of Doubtsville. But Burnout City includes things like the carousel, right? Like, the carousel is like, it's very placid. You're just kind of going in circles. You're not really going anywhere. Yeah. Saying no to hustle porn. Like, right, there is a moment in your life. I interviewed somebody who is a huge podcaster, and he was like, I got all these deals to syndicate and to go huge. And what I realized is that I've got small children, and kids spell love Time. And there's only so many more weeks and months and years that my kids are going to be able to be like, yeah, Dad, let's go to Disney World on a Tuesday, before they're like, you old fart, we don't want to hang out with you. And he's like, so I can always do that later. But right now, it's not don't grow. It's not, stagnate. It's just right now, I'm pretty happy with where I am. You can have it all. Just not to have it all at the same exact time. And so the carousel is really about sort of deciding what you're going to do. And then that leads right into the whack-a-mole game, which is all about focusing on what matters, right? We feel like we've got a billion things coming at us, and the faster pace feels untenable. Here's what I would argue, though. It's not that we're too busy. It's that we're too busy doing things that don't actually matter to us, because the exhaustion doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from all the costume changes and the code shifting that we need to do to get from one place to the other and to be all the things for all the people. Then we're never there for ourselves, right? So how do we figure out what really matters to us? And then we go through the bumper cars, where we're dealing with perfectionist tendencies. We're dealing with the gravitron, like how do you stand tall when the floor drops out? And then my favorite chapter is the loop-de-loop, right? The loop-de-loop, it keeps going around and around, and you keep sort of starting all over again. And this, I think, is such a perfect description of Wonder Hell, because for each one of us, we are going to be on that loop to loop. Wonder Hell itself is one, repeating loop to loop. So that's where we have to adopt a beginner's mindset. I know as an entrepreneur, when I was just crushing it, I was killing it. I was making it rain. I was growing 100% year over year over year. Amazing. But I started to do something that I didn't actually realize was a problem. I kind of started mailing it in. Like I would show up to a pitch and I'd crush the pitch and we would get it and it would be great. And then I would show up to another one and I'd crush it and I get it. And what would happen is I started preparing less and less each time because I started sniffing my own glue, right? I started believing that I could just walk in and just be myself and everything would be great. And then I walked into a pitch for it was the family foundation of a scion of Wall Street. And I didn't even know the guy's last name when I walked in the door. I mean, I was completely unprepared. And because I had done this like 100 times in the previous year, I still sold the work, but I had sold it like just by the skin of my teeth. Like I got lucky. Like
the wrong way. Yeah.
I got it the wrong way. I got lucky and I got luckier than I really should have gotten. And I remember getting in the elevator and going downstairs and thinking, okay, I need to leave. Like it's time for me to sell this company to the women who helped me build it, because that was irresponsible. That was malpractice. And it wasn't until I was writing the book and having a conversation with Whitney Johnson, who is, Harvard, brilliant Harvard researcher and really one of the top business minds in the world, that she was like, oh, that's the S curve, where like you're at the bottom of the S and like it's hard. And then all of a sudden the S swoops up and like you're like, okay, I'm getting it. And then you're at the top of the S and you're like, sweet spot, cool, I'm good. And the problem is that if you're at the top of your S curve long enough, you start self-sabotaging. Which sounds like, what are you talking about? Self-sabotaging.
No, makes so much sense.
Right. And then you do. And I look back and I was like, oh my God, I was self-sabotaging. What I did in that meeting could have been disastrous for my company, right? He could have called me on my bullshit. He could have told all of his friends that are on all the boards of all the major organizations in the country. Like it could have been terrible because I was self-sabotaging. And so we have to also know that when we're feeling burnt out, it may be because we're doing too much. We're doing too much that doesn't actually matter. Maybe it's time to just stay where we are, or maybe it's time to leap to an entire new thing.
Right. Cool.
Start Wonder Hell all over again.
Right. And it just keep going through that. I as you were talking about a beginner's mindset and getting to the top of the S and sort of swinging down. There's a guy by the name of Alan Stein Jr. He's an author. Actually.
Yep. Raise your game.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Raise your game. There you go.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yeah, I thought you did. He talks a lot about, when he met Kobe, and one of the key things he took from Kobe was, don't get bored with the basics.
Yes.
Right. And as you said, early days in the success, you spend a lot of time running those plays, going through the basics, making sure you're prepped. And I used to do this sometimes I've done this as a trainer or a facilitator or a speaker, right? Which is like, yeah, F it. I know what I'm doing. I'll roll in and do the piece. Right. Yeah. And if you're not careful, this is derails you, right?
Yes. Well, I talk a little bit about that in the bumper cars chapter, where I talk about how to quiet our perfectionist tendencies. I didn't realize until I wrote the book that there's actually 3 different types of perfectionism. So there's sort of socially prescribed perfectionism, which we all know is like social media, telling us who we should be. Then there's other focused perfectionism, where we're just micromanaging all the people who work with us or work for us. And both of those types of perfectionist tendencies are pretty bad for us, right? They strain our relationship. They hurt our self-esteem. They're terrible. Nobody wants to be around either of those types. But then there's self-directed, self-oriented perfectionism. And self-oriented perfectionism are the people like Kobe, who they are intrinsically motivated and they believe in the basics and they build the habits. And so the best way to deal with, if you have high standards, and I think we all have high standards, who listen to this podcast, right? Anybody who's listening to this podcast has high standards. It's not a matter of saying, I want to just create a good product, and at the end of it being either excited or disappointed on what that product looks like. I interviewed a guy by the name of Jonathan Fields, who's an author. And when he told me a story about how when he was younger, he found some paint in his grandfather's basement, and he started, he made an easel and he just started painting stuff. And he had in his mind, he had a vision of what the art pieces would look like. And he was like, and then I would finish and they wouldn't look like what they look like in my brain. And I would destroy them and I'd start all over again. And he said, and it was ridiculous because I was expecting the art to look way better than my talent and my practice even I had any right to feel at that moment. He's like, but now as I'm older and I've been knocked to my knees a lot and I figured it out, he said, every time I see something that I can't quite do yet, I'm like, isn't it amazing that I'm not perfect yet, but I have the rest of my life to get better and better and better. And so it's really not about sort of perfecting the game, right? It's perfecting each individual piece, each individual habit that goes into that.
Yeah, it's very samurai what you just said.
Yes.
But it's true. I love what you were talking about before, which is like the importance of being reflective during this exercise as well. And what we just sort of, went into is not just enjoying the process, but really mastering the practice and mastering the process and perfecting the steps.
Especially, if in Wonder Hell, there's no endpoint, right? If each Wonder Hell is a waypoint, you're always like, every time I describe this book to somebody, they're like, I think I'm in Wonder Hell. And I'm like, yeah, here's the big conceit of it all. We're all in Wonder Hell, like all of us, every time, always. It's just a matter of where you are in the process. So, waiting for gratification and fulfillment at the end, I don't know. That seems like a pretty short window when you have the entirety of your life to be getting there.
Correct. And maybe we should be grateful for other things, right? And what you described is my last 30 years in business, right? Which is, and it's evolved a lot and we've grown, we're different today and I'm different today than I was, 25, 20, 15 years ago. But it's that same cycle, right? That's what makes, that's why I relate to this so much. All right. As far as the book goes, it's coming out in April. Can people pre-order it now?
People can pre-order it now at wonderhell.com. And and if they pre-order the book now, actually before it comes out, we're actually giving away copies of Limitless as well, which is my last book. And for, I think, 5 books, you get registration in the Limitless course. So there's all kinds of great pre-order bonuses that are all available at wonderhell.com.
Amazing. We'll put that all in the footnotes as well. Where else can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more, if they want to learn more about the work that you're doing now?
So my name is Laura Gassner Otting, and all my friends call me LGO. So you can find me at Hey, H-E-Y, Hey LGO on all the socials. So you can find me there. And if you put in the show notes, or if you look up my TED Talk on Wonder Hell, Why Success Doesn't Bring Happiness and What to Do About It, we are almost at 1 million views. So people can get a little 12-minute overview, a little bit more in depth about the process of what it feels like to be in Wonder Hell and how to get out of it.
Amazing. And I just watched TED Talk earlier. It's awesome. Right?
Thank you.
And almost 1 million views, right? So to the audience, go and watch the TED Talk. Let's get her above 1 million.
Yeah, it's it's funny. As I was saying, I'm sort of in Wonder Hell about Wonder Hell, because now I'm like, I don't know, could we get to 1 million? What does it mean? What would that feel like? What would that look like? Then what else could we do? Maybe I could get to 5 million, right? So we're always in that space. So
right. And that's
Wonder Hell about Wonder Hell,
where we started, which is like, that's part of the success, right? Which is this insane thinking, right? We're just going to run this Ferris wheel over and over and over again. All right, Laura, it was amazing chatting with you. At the end of the episode, we come to the most important question, which is, what do you think we could do to all be better humans tomorrow?
Okay, this is what I think. I think that every one of us have people who watch us, whether it's your kids, whether it's people who work with you, whether it's family members, whether it's people on social media, whether it's people you have no idea are even paying attention. And if you remembered in every moment of your life that somebody is watching you and somebody is deciding whether or not they want to be like you, whether or not they're better because you're in their life, you will probably make different decisions. So I would say, let's all just remember that you are, to someone, even if you don't know it, a role model.
That's amazing. It's amazing. Probably one of the best answers we've had so far. All right, to the audience, go and follow Laura, HEYLGO is Instagram, and Wonderhell.
Wanderlust is a totally different book. That'll be my next book after I retire, right? And I travel around the world.
There's an art gallery that's got a painting of a Ferris wheel, and as you were talking today, I was picturing this painting. I'm gonna send you a link to check it out.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
Back to the audience. If you like today's episode, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to share, and we will see you next week.